week, so this time we didn't push it off that far. How you feeling today, Jay?
Good, my man. Good, my man.
All
It's
right.
was an extra day off today, so feeling a little bit motivated and revived, and super stoked to sync up again with you. So,
Nice. Well, you know what? I think we should start calling this beer and business video logs. Today we're going to talk about when is enough enough, and basically really just going over when is enough money enough. That's one thing that my dad always asks me is when is enough enough, Bryce? When are you going to stop the hustle? When are you going to stop the grind? What is enough? And I think that for so much of my career and life, when he asked that question, I thought to myself, well, that's a stupid question. There is never enough. I'm going to keep going and I don't care. And I think that maybe that I had the wrong mindset because my whole mind was all about just the money, just chase, just chase, just chase. And I got to the point where I was earning 200 grand a year, 180 grand a year and plus, and I would get my paychecks and I'd be like, meh, this is an empty feeling. I was like, what am I going to spend my money on? I got nothing to spend. I bought my house. We've got cars.
hmm
My
hmm
kids are safe and fed and in sports and stuff like that. And I literally just got to a place of not knowing where to put my money and yet constantly wanting well more. And I was
Wow.
lucky enough to live well below my means and not raise. Here's my income here. I didn't raise my living expenses here. I stayed in a very comfortable zone down there. But it just felt to me like enough was never enough. And guess what? I was absolutely miserable and I had a good job. The company I
Mm.
worked for was amazing. The owners were great. My hours were solid, but I wasn't happy. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So it's all about like, what are we chasing and why are we chasing it and what is it all for? Right. So
Yeah.
I'll open up the floor to you, Jay.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have been very fortunate through my life to, I guess, just let fate take its course as far as career growth went, and where I lived, and affordability. And so, to me, I just I when the money, my most successful roles where I was making the most money at. Um, the money was always great, and it left that ability to pick and choose where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do and what I wanted to spend my money on. But you're absolutely right. It doesn't always equate to happiness. And so I think for me, it's really, I think that money is great and more of it is great, but it's really just fuel in the tank of life, right? So
Yep.
whatever you kind of like, if you want to go to Mexico every 3 months, well, then you're going to have more fuel in the tank, right? Um, but I think for me, where money is most valuable is where you spend it on experiences, right? I think
Yep.
that a lot of us get into this world of uh, money buy, and even some of it is like what I call retail therapy, right? People
Oh
are
yeah.
like not necessarily happy, and then they're like, "Well, I'm not happy, but I got a lot of money in the bank, and I'm gonna go buy some stuff. I'm gonna buy a new suit, or I'm gonna buy some perfume, or I'm gonna
Because
buy a
I
new
can.
car." Yeah, because I
Because I
can.
can. And I deserve it.
Yeah, and rightfully so, right? People work hard for their money, and so yeah, I think it's a really it keeps on going. To me, my kind of guide to trying to ground myself
Hmm.
is that, and I'm gonna go dark because that's where we're gonna go. Is I
Oh,
always think about what's coming to me with in my grave, right?
yeah.
That's it.
Is
Like,
there gonna be a
and
U-Haul chasing your hearse? Is there a U-Haul chasing your hearse?
maybe we could get one of
I
those
don't think
big
so.
giant container bins, and like I'll be in there, and then all
Yeah,
my stuff will be in there. You know
yeah,
what I mean? But like,
yeah.
so to me, it's always like that grounding principle. Like, do you need that car? Like, or does the car you have suffice? Because really, all it is like the enjoyment now,
Well,
right?
let's stop that for a second because
Yeah.
Okay, I sell cars. Like that's my living.
Yeah.
That's what paid for my house and my life.
Hmm.
Do you own the car or does the car own you? Where are you at in that scenario?
Hmm.
Do you have a car so you can get to work, or do you work so you can pay your car payment?
Right.
One of those
Right.
scenarios is the right scenario, and one of them is the absolute wrong scenario that keeps you stuck in a trap. Because that's what it
Yep.
is. This is a trap, and
Yep.
everybody's doing it. We're all doing it.
Yeah, I think
So
like there's status, right? Like, and I feel like the more you climb up the corporate ladders or the money chain or the success rate comes along a certain pressure within our, world or at least in Canada and probably in the US where you start to get like, like you said, a $200,000 a year job, the expectation is you have a car that matches, you have a suit that matches, you have a watch that matches, you have a house that matches.
yeah,
And there's these pressures within our society and on the social side of things that kind of like that's the thing. People start making more money, but then they're like, oh, but I need to have like fancier
it
stuff to
dictates it
match.
dictates your lifestyle,
Yes, it
right? Where
does. It
I
does.
was lucky that I didn't go for the crazy house.
Good for you. Yeah.
I bought a house that was completely like just a normal house. Beautiful. We love it. Like it might
Yeah.
even be
It's
too
an
big.
awesome house.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it, like
Yeah.
I wish that we had something more along the lines of like you've got two houses, but your house on the island, like because we don't need all this space, right? Like, and I was lucky enough that my 200,000 a year job also gave me $100,000 car, so I
Hmm.
was able to keep to that status quo. But at the end of the day, I'll tell you this right now is that you get that $100,000 car or that $80,000 car, and yeah, that's sick. And Jason, you have a sick car and you know all about it. Is that in 6 months it doesn't matter anymore. It's just another car. It just gets you from point A to point B, and then it's such a liability because you spend I don't know a nice car nowadays. I mean, inflation, 50 grand for a nice car,
Oh, at least. At
right? And guess
least.
what? So you're paying interest on this 50 grand, and then you're paying taxes, and then you're paying interest on your taxes, and you're also getting taxed on your income. You're double taxing, you're paying interest on your tax, and then guess what? Get what is your liability doing all day? It's sitting there.
Hmm.
When you're sleeping, is it making you money? It's not. It's
No,
sitting
no.
there. When you're at work, is it make no, it's not making you money.
Yeah.
And I like cars need just to be a point A to point B kind of scenario, right? Like so it's just like it feels so much like a trap, right? Like and it is that thing. It's like you get the job and you get this and like it's keeping up with the Joneses. I have a lot of friends that make more money than me. And and I'm guilty of looking at them and be like, oh, I want that. I don't need that, but I
Hmm.
right
Yeah. Yeah.
now I drive around in a crappy Honda Civic, and I've never been happier because it doesn't own me,
Well, that's it, right?
right?
And you think about your like, your 9 to 5 job or whatever you're driving, to and from, what are you doing? Like you're driving through traffic probably in rush hour, and then you get to your job. You need to maybe work longer hours because you
Yep.
got this nicer car, and then you got to drive home, and you're going through the traffic, and like it's like you're basically enslaved to your items and the things that you have around you because you
Yeah.
put yourself in that place, right? And I mean, for me, I drove my car in my job full time, and so I felt like in that case I could justify a little
It
bit
you
spending
could
a little more,
justify it, but
but
you totally can justify it, and let's not be hasty here because the Lexus is one of the best cars made, and that's
mhm,
facts. Like
yeah.
check the list of the most reliable cars out there. It's Porsche, it's Lexus. But the thing is that and it makes sense because your job basically paid for your car, and I'd be doing the
Hmm.
same thing. And one day
Hmm.
my business is going to buy me a baller car, and I'm going to be stoked about it. But
Yeah.
until you get to that level in that space where your business or your job that you have is paying that, and it's not a liability on you, and it's not
Yeah.
taxing you, um, but like how like you get that feeling like, oh, you open that door and you're just pumped and you're so
Hmm.
excited to get in that car, but
Yeah,
that goes away.
it
And
does. It
and
does.
and that's what I meant for you is like you got your sick Lexus. I remember when you bought it and how stoked you were, but how long did it slowly take to kind of dwindle away to nothing? At 6 months, maybe a year, I don't know. If you were
Yeah.
paying the bill for it, maybe a lot quicker because
Oh yeah.
you buy it and then all of a sudden you got this buyer's remorse. It's like,
Yes.
ooh, I have to pay this for the next 7 years of my life, and
Yep.
I hope that nobody watching, some of the people pay it for, 90 some odd months. Like
Oh,
you're
it's
on
so
an
bad.
you're on an 8-year contract, and guess what? Your needs will change in 2 to 3 years. You've got young kids now, well, they're going to be a little bit older, and then you're going to
Yep.
need something different. And then guess what? When your kids are graduated, you don't need that big vehicle anymore. Guess what? Your needs change again, right? So it's
Yeah.
like you're stuck into a 9-year loan.
Yes.
You're
Yeah.
gonna pay an like believably amount of money on that car.
And plus, like,
Never,
if
never, Brian.
those things change too, right? Life changes. Maybe you have a third kid and that car isn't practical anymore, and now you're going to have to sell it. Well, guess
Yep.
what? Cars are, not the greatest investment. Now you're going to
Nope.
take a loss on that after spending, putting all this money down on 2, 3 years.
Yeah.
It's dangerous, right? It can put you in a bad spot. And so
Yep.
I think when again, as you're growing in businesses, I think the self check, and not feeling pressure to buy that next upgrade, or maybe just be reasonable, right? Like maybe you don't need to get the Lexus. Maybe you can get a really nice Toyota, right? Like maybe a fully loaded Toyota, right?
Honestly.
It's yeah.
Or
I
not, or
remember.
a base model Toyota, because honestly, it's just gonna go here to there, there to here, and it's an appliance. And that's the way we got
Yeah.
to look at these things because they're an appliance. They have a job to do. You know what I mean? Like, do we go to the hardware store, and some of us do, or Home Depot or whatever, and go buy a $20,000 fridge? Because that's, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's a Lexus of fridges, but at the end of the day, you just need something to keep your food cold.
Yeah,
You know what I
in
mean?
the
Like,
end, yeah. Does the $500 one do it as well as the $30,000 one do it? Probably, yeah, right? Like,
probably. Yeah, it doesn't have the
maybe the
window with
Christmas
the
one.
lights and you got the
Yeah.
little door. I've seen them and they're dope.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
But
I agree. But I think there like it's always this pressure, right? Whether it's self-inflicted um or others. Like I remember one promotion I got, and the second I signed my offer letter, my new boss was like, okay, so when are you gonna get, like, what kind of car are you gonna get? Like, you
yeah.
gonna get a BM? Are you gonna get a Lexus? Like, so and so has this Mercedes, blah blah
Yeah.
blah. And it was just like, and I had a young family at the time, and we just moved, and it was just like and I was driving a Matrix at the
I
time, and
remember that.
yeah,
I've
and
driven it.
yeah, you
Manual
did, yeah.
transmission matrix,
Manual
man.
transmission, man, that's the way to go. But and then even through like 2, 3 years of doing that job, I even with my peers, and they're, I'm pulling up in my little Matrix, and then they're pulling up in their BMs and their Audis, and it's like
Yeah.
that. I stuck to my guns because I knew I just it was a reliable car, got me to
Yeah.
point A to point B, like you said,
Yeah.
and I just didn't let that pressure um, put me in making decisions because I had
Totally.
other goals in mind that my priorities just weren't there, right? But again, if really came to that pressure, even if it wasn't by word, just
Hmm.
seeing other people, it's like, ooh, nice. Like we all want the flashy,
We
fancy
we
stuff,
feel
but
disadvantaged when we can do it and our friends are doing it, but we're not doing it. But it
yeah,
should be a point of celebration and of
yeah,
celebrating our strength of knowing, you know what, like I'm not working so I can have a
mm,
car that takes me to work. Like
right,
that's not my only purpose. Like, cause like we live in the most expensive place, and I'll tell you right now, like a big part of me is like if I could, the first thing I would do is get out of BC because it's
mm-hmm,
so ridiculously expensive that there's so many places out there where you
yep,
can, not have to pay 50% of your income to your housing because it
yep,
shouldn't. That's just crazy. And like Vancouver's got it even worse. Like it's
oh,
unbelievable. I don't know how people can get ahead in Vancouver. It's just it's crazy. It's
like
it's
I think.
insane.
I think when those things where like you're basically house poor, right? You really are living your life for the roof over your head,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think 50% is lowballing it. I think a lot
Yeah.
of people
You're
like
right. Totally.
70% probably. And so, you know, and what's it doing? Like, I mean, yes, BC is a beautiful place.
It's beautiful.
It is
But
beautiful,
it's
but
like the car. After a certain amount of period,
well, yeah,
you don't go to the ocean every day. You
no,
don't
you don't
enjoy
go
it.
to
Yeah,
the
you drive
surf
by, you're like,
anymore.
oh, that's sick. Oh yeah, okay, I'm going to work.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I
yeah.
mean? Like it at the end of the day, whatever, right? Like,
Yeah,
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 it's
and that's it. Like, does $1 million home versus a $500,000 home do the same thing? Yes.
it
They put a
does.
roof over your head.
It
It's the
does.
bougie. Do you want the quartz countertops? Do you want the
Yeah.
ocean property? And it's like, we all do, sure. But like,
Yeah.
you know, you have that oceanfront property and everything has a limit that, and then you take it, you just like, whatever. It's not as exciting anymore. It's not, it's again, it's kind of like that buyer's remorse period. You're like, oh, I'm kind of over it now. And now you're
Totally.
committed to it. And so that's where I think if you can self-check a little bit
Yeah.
and just live within your means, or like, just have like, hey, I only need this type of car, this type of house, this kind of watch, or this kind of electronics, or this
Yeah.
TV size versus the bouge, like the bougie
Totally.
stuff, right?
Yeah.
And when you do that, you go, well, your cost of living is here versus you can afford here, and that's
Yeah.
nice up there.
Yeah.
But this here with that
Yeah.
range
It's
gives you
huge.
the flexibility to make experiences. You'll be able
And
to go, oh, go ahead, yeah.
oh, sorry. Yeah, yeah. And yeah, you can go wherever you want. And it gives you the space to do your own thing. You want to open up your own business. You
Yes.
see an opportunity that you're absolutely
Yes.
passionate about it. And
Yep.
you know that your living expenses can do it. And you don't need that crazy expensive job. And I'm not saying don't look for those jobs and don't earn high
Yeah.
income. Earning high
Yeah.
income is great, but
Yes.
buying and buying and buying because it doesn't make sense. Like just because you can or you want to, right? Like don't work a job that you're not happy working
Yeah.
because you earn an
Just
insane amount of money. Because at the end of the day, it's like how much time do we spend at our job? At least what 35% of our time, 40% of our
yeah.
time, and the other 20 some odd 5% of the time we're sleeping. So like
Yeah.
it's a lot of your time, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just so much time. And I know that like for my journey, it was like I wasn't happy where I was and I was earning all this money. And then we went on a trip. I took the kids to Disneyland, and that's what that, all my high income earned. I took the kids, we drove to Disneyland, we went to Universal Studios, we were at Disneyland for quite a bit of days. We went to San Francisco, we stayed at 5-star
Wow.
hotels right downtown, the Hilton. Like we went
Nice.
all out on this trip. Like I took the kids to San Diego. We watched the Compadres play the Dodgers, right? Like we did, and then we went to Vegas, and then like we just like there was like no hold off on anything. Like we went all in on the trip. I'm a very all in or nothing type of guy, and that's what
You are.
that income did for me. But guess what? When I got back, I was like, whoa, me and my family connected a lot better than we had ever had because we'd never had that much time together because I'm working so much, and it got my
Yeah.
gears spinning. And then I took a
Yeah.
bigger opportunity that took me away further from my family because I worked myself up to that level that I had to do it. And then I left and I went to an opportunity where I had so many phone calls. People were like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Like, what
Yeah.
are you thinking? Like, what? You know what? And it took like it was tough. It was a tough move, but at the end of the day, like I've never been happier. And now I'm working towards my own business and making money my own way. I do want that money, right? But like
Yep.
I'm not going to chase cars. I'm not going to
Yeah.
chase mansions because I don't need a ten bedroom house because I can only sleep in how many rooms at one time? One, right? I
As
don't
far
I
as I
don't
know, you could jump from bed to bed throughout the
Well, yeah,
night. That's not gonna
how
be
many
fun.
rooms in a house can you occupy at one time? Like this room,
Yeah.
Jay, is the only time this room gets used is when we do podcasts or video
Uh,
logs.
yeah.
What's the
Yeah.
point?
Yeah.
I don't even
Yep.
need this, right? Like it's
Nope.
totally dedicated. It's totally sick, and I use it every time we do a video log. And other than that,
Yeah.
nobody comes in here.
Well,
Right?
I want to go back to too about that that gap, right? Because if you go to the nicer stuff, the more expensive stuff, here's the other danger to it. Let's say you don't like your job, right? But you're
Yeah.
like now you're like you're kind of stuck in that I need to make X amount of dollars to pay the bills and pay the mortgage and pay the lease or the car or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so now you're kind of locked in there because the
You're
items you
nut. It's so big.
purchase, yeah, and
Yeah.
so you're locked. Now what does some serious damage there is stress. You're like, okay, well, I don't like my
Yeah.
job, and now like, I'm pissed off, and then you're like, where do I find another job that's going to pay me this amount of money? And like, stress kills, man. Like
Literally
your
kills. My
mind.
dad just had a heart attack because
Oh my
stress from work.
goodness.
So for sure,
Yeah.
like you're right, man. Stress kills. Don't put yourself
Yeah.
through it. It's not worth it.
Yeah. So not like so when you think about that purchase, like yes, you can afford it. Yes, you can get through it. But it's kind of like you said, like, you gotta kind of watch it though and maybe come
You
down
really do.
here and then too, if you don't like your job, you go,
Yeah.
okay, no stress.
I'm
I
out.
don't like it, right? And
Yeah.
maybe it's a high pressure job too, and it's like, hey, you know what? I want to chill out a little bit. Well, guess what? Chill out doesn't pay that kind of money. So now all of a sudden you're like, oh, like maybe you start looking at retirement, or maybe you just want to like take it easy a little bit more. But you can't. So now what do you're committed
No.
till you retire? Well,
Yeah.
then you're just pushing yourself and pushing yourself and pushing
Well,
yourself. You're gonna hit the retire, and you're probably gonna freaking fall over and die, man.
well,
Like
how
it's
many
it's not
stories have you
good.
heard about that where guys
Oh
finally
man.
or women finally retire and then mostly guys, because guys have heart attacks usually more than
Yeah.
women do, and they die, right? Like,
Yeah.
and it's one of those things, and like it makes people around them, their friends,
Yeah.
their coworkers, their family, be like, I'm freaking retiring. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna suck in and I'm gonna find a way to retire in the next 2 years because Bob was set to retire and he bought a boat and he spent so much time and blah 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 and he was gonna go and he never got on his boat and his boat sat in the driveway and he died. Like
Hmm.
we have one shot as far as we know it, and if you're
You gotta
doing
make it
what
count.
you love and you're putting on the hours and the time and the income and stuff like that, and that doesn't stress you out, then all the power to you. Everybody's dream is different. For me, it's just not that, like, because when is enough enough? You know what? For me, it's like freedom. I want financial
Mm.
freedom. I want the ability to take 3 months off. I want my money not to pay for a mansion, not to pay for items, but it's like, we talked about this before the podcast. I want it to be, let's go on a trip. Let's not work for a month. Let's not work for 6 months. Let's do
Yeah.
something completely different. I'm not feeling it. I'm going to shift and do something different. We don't have to have the same job for 40 years anymore. Like that's not what's
No.
happening, you
No.
know?
No.
And sorry, one more thing is that, you know what, in
Yeah.
20 years, the jobs that are around right now won't be around anymore. They'll be completely different, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think again, it's even too having a plan in place. Like I think a lot of us, certainly myself, I felt immortal for a long time, right? I just thought
yeah,
I was invincible,
you're young.
through my 20s, my
Yeah,
30s. I was like, you didn't think about like the what ifs, like what
yeah,
if I break my leg, or what if I get ill, or what do I need?
yeah,
What happens if I have to go in for a surgery, right? And
yes.
it's one of those things where, again, like, could you imagine that stress level again if extended yourself? You can afford it, but you extended yourself a little bit further, then you get sick.
And then what happens?
Man, like,
You
I
better
mean, you
have
better
good
have some good
insurance.
insurance.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
you
And
better know a
so
good insurance salesman.
it starts to compile, right? And to me, I'd rather just take in those experiences with the extra money. Like, it doesn't even cost money, right? Like, as long
No,
as you're like, hey, like, I've got the weekend off, and I'm not like, I don't have to go in because I have to make X amount of money, or I got to catch up on work or whatever. I'm gonna go down to the beach, or I'm gonna go to Tofino, or I'm gonna go out to a really nice dinner, take my
Yeah.
family out to a nice dinner tonight, and
Yep.
like not even think about a
No.
budget, right? Because
Exactly.
when you start thinking about a budget and you're like, I don't know if I can afford
Stress.
this,
Yeah.
stress, and then you're
Yeah.
just like, it's just not worth it. It's not, house poor sucks. So,
No, it does.
um, yeah, I fully think that. But again, I think the pressures, like when you look at like social media, right? Like you look on Instagram and you look on Facebook and you look like
TikTok.
TikTok and all these things. It's like people have really nice clothes, and
Yeah.
they're on really fancy vacations, and they're showing off their new renos, and like that person's got a really nice suit, or like look at that, really, really nice steak that they're eating at dinner or whatever, and that really,
Yeah.
really fancy restaurant. It comes in at all angles for us too. And that's where I think we really get into that. Well, I got to like, this is my friend and they're showing me that stuff. Well, if they can afford it, I can afford it. And, maybe you can, maybe you can't. Some people live off of credit, like it's income,
Yep.
and put
Yep.
themselves in really, really bad spots. But, it's the pressure, right? And so it's really important to go like, what do I want to make of this life that I have? Do I want
Totally.
to be a good father? Do I want to be a good parent? Do I want to be a great friend? Do I want to be a great leader? Do I want to be whatever you want to be? Do I want to, like you, is like take on a passion and roll it into a job or a hobby, and make it in
Yeah.
a job and your income? But when you have that pressure of too much bills, it's hard to make time to get over to that, maybe that little passion project you have that
You
you
can't even
want to
think
make
about
it
it.
go. You can't, because
You
you don't
can't. You
have
don't have the
time and you have
space.
pressure. Yeah,
Yeah, you don't have the
exactly.
mental space. I'm going to stop you there because this is obviously a big topic that we could
Yeah.
speak for a lot of hours.
Yes.
So we'll stop this right now and at part one, and then we'll pick up part two at another time. Thanks so much for
Great.
watching, guys. Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bryce.